to discuss the first ever edition of the Global Index on Responsible AI and insights for crafting potential AI policy in the Philippines. I am quite new to the AI space. My area of expertise, as some of you may know, is telecom and internet infrastructure policy, which I've been working on for over 15 years. My other field is cybersecurity policy, in particular, the protection of critical information infrastructure. So this is actually my debut in AI research through the Global Index on Responsible AI. My personal advocacy as a policy analyst is to bridge the understanding between technology and policy, which I hope we will achieve in this session. So, some of the concepts that I'll be discussing with you were already briefly taken up by our AI expert, Dr. Peter C. So for this session, we will do a deep dive into the intricate aspects of responsible and ethical AI, using the lens of this pioneering global study that centers on promoting human rights in the age of AI. So let's begin. So we will discuss first the concept of responsible AI, what it means, and then we will discuss the results of the first edition of the Global Index on Responsible AI. We will then focus on the 10 key takeaways from the survey and then put a spotlight on the Philippines and how we fare so far in promoting responsible AI. Then finally, we will tackle insights that can be applied in crafting AI policies in the Philippines, noting that there are several AI-related bills already filed in the 19th Congress, the current Congress. Finally, we will zero in on key insights as AI evolves and becomes more and more relevant to our lives. At the end of this lecture, you should be able to understand the importance of adopting a human-centric approach in designing, developing, and deploying AI solutions to ensure that human rights are upheld, protected, and prioritized in the entire AI value chain. Okay. So what is responsible AI? We define this as the making sure that the design, development, deployment, and governance of AI is done in a way that respects and protects human rights and upholds the principles of AI ethics through every stage of the AI lifecycle and value chain. This requires that all actors in the ecosystem, whether it's government, private sector, civil society organizations, the academe, are involved in the national AI ecosystem and taking responsibility for the human, social, and environmental impacts of their decisions. So it's not just about us humans as individuals, but humans and groups of people as a society, and also the environment where we live. The responsible design, deployment, and governance of AI are proportionate or should be proportionate to the purpose of its use. And they should meet the technological needs of the individuals and societies that it seeks to serve. So that is the definition of responsible AI according to the Global Index on Responsible AI. So the Global Index measures government commitments and country capacities toward the development of responsible AI through or using a technical, social, and political lens. That this is something that's not being done in the present indices out there. Usually, the studies now are mostly focused on the technical lens or technical aspects. So this moves beyond the usual parameters of innovation, being done in R&D or investments being put by governments in the private sector. So this index fills a critical gap by employing human rights-based benchmarks. And it also covered continents and countries that are usually not found in a study about AI. So between November 2023 and February 2024, data was collected firsthand by 138 in-country researchers. I was the country researcher for the Philippines. And researchers completed this survey containing 1,862 questions across 98 thematic areas, designed to ascertain the conditions and actions being taken to advance responsible AI in each of the country that was surveyed. And then after the survey or data collection was done, a global team of quality assessors conducted an exhaustive review of all the data collected. The data covered for this first edition of the Global Index was from November 2022 to November 2023. So that's a 1-year period. Any government framework, government action, and non-state actor initiatives after November 2023 are not included in the survey. Okay, so this is the conceptual framework for the Global Index. It is composed of 3 dimensions that align with human rights-based standards and democratic principles. As you can see there, it's on capacities, human rights, and governance. 3 pillars accounting for the AI ecosystem. So that's policy frameworks, government actions, which may not necessarily be policy, but it's any initiative by the government, and non-state actors. There are 19 thematic areas covering the core components of the concepts of responsible AI, which we just defined earlier, and 57 indicators measuring the performance of each thematic area within each pillar. So that's too much information, I know, to take in right now. But to give you an example, no, so the survey looked into, let's say, government or national policy frameworks, and it looked at these initiatives in each of the 19 thematic areas on responsible AI capacities that you see on your screen. The same was done for government non-policy actions as well as non-state actors. So each thematic area assesses the performance of 3 different pillars of responsible AI. So as you can see, the same, it was an iteration of the different actors across the thematic themes. Okay. So the 3 dimensions that promote human rights and democratic principles are the following. So the governance dimension measures the degree to which national governance regimes uphold effective and rights-preserving practices in responsible AI. So it's a national level initiative. In the case of the Philippines, these would involve the Office of the President, the executive branches, as well as the judiciary, particularly the Supreme Court, for decisions that have a national coverage, as well as laws in Congress or passed by Congress. The human rights dimension measures the extent to which countries are taking steps to protect, promote, and respect key human rights implicated with the use of AI. The capacities dimension looks at whether key state capacities required to advance not only AI technically, but responsible AI actually exist and are being met and promoted. So each of the 3 dimensions, the dimensions in the previous slide is divided into 19 thematic themes or areas that cover the key components of what we consider responsible AI. So these indicators are actually based or mainly relied on the UNESCO recommendation on the ethics of AI and the OECD principles on AI. Apart from those frameworks, consultations with stakeholders were also conducted, especially in the Global South. This is very important to emphasize because, as I mentioned, many studies focus on developed countries that are actually technologically advanced and have mature institutions that are using AI. But as Dr. Peter C. mentioned earlier, the Philippines, even if we are not as developed technologically and we are not developed financially and economically, Filipinos are actually heavy users of AI. So this is an important distinction for this particular study. Okay, next. So under the governance dimension, there are 9 thematic areas. We will do a deep dive of each of these areas because this is very important in understanding and raising awareness about what are the different aspects of responsible AI principles and guidelines, as well as policy frameworks. So let's start with national AI policy. Policy is a course of action adopted by the government in an official capacity. AI policies are important because they articulate a cohesive strategy for how the country intends to deal with the challenges and opportunities posed by AI. So policy actually guides the actions of all stakeholders in various sectors. As I always say, the state or the government is in a unique position because it is the only institution that can put in place policy that covers everybody. So national AI policy is important in that respect. In the Philippines, we don't have AI policies yet. What we do have are AI strategies. In 2021, for example, and Dr. C also mentioned this, the Department of Trade and Industry launched the country's first national AI strategy roadmap, and it was updated this year. Also, the Department of Science and Technology launched an AI research and development strategy. And I can imagine in the near future that other government agencies that have a jurisdiction of a particular sector or industry would also issue their own strategy or guidelines. So whether or not this is a good thing, Dr. Peter C. mentioned earlier that we usually work in silos, that there doesn't seem to be a comprehensive strategy or direction that the Philippines is taking when it comes to AI. But for now, we are seeing these initiatives, and I can say that having a strategy or guidelines per sector is actually a good thing rather than none. Okay, next, impact assessment. When you say impact assessment, it is a structured process for considering the implications for people and the environment or proposed actions while there is still an opportunity to modify or even abandon the proposed action if the impact is seen to potentially pose a potential or actual harm. So this is important because in the context of AI, we can use impact assessment as a tool for predicting the anticipated and assessing the actual consequence of an AI system in terms of its benefits or harms to humans. So users of AI must consider the type and scope of the impact before and after deployment. So impact assessment can be done before and after, especially with so many studies now being done by developed countries. We already have tools that we can use to use it. Yan ang that is actually the benefit of being a latecomer to the game, no? We can see how others are doing it, and then we can adopt and adapt the tools that they use to our own particular context. The third thematic area is human oversight and determination. This is the act of supervising something, like a practice or process, by humans. This is very important, by humans, to ensure that it's being done correctly. So in AI, this requires systems to be designed in a way that allows us humans to supervise or control and provide clear channel of intervention or interference to prevent or disrupt adverse effects in the use of and deployment of AI tools. This is important because oversight and determination needs to be done by humans, not by another machine or not by another large language model. So you cannot have other software or models checking other models, because then it becomes a loop. Who checks the machine that's checking the other machine? So human oversight and determination is an important aspect. Okay. Next is responsibility and accountability. This means being answerable or accountable for something within one's power, control, or management. In AI, this concerns the humans or decision-making body, whether it's a public or private entity. to whom a certain outcome may be assigned. So the question is, who is responsible for what? What being decisions, outcomes, and impacts. For example, when an AI system hallucinates, and this was a question earlier, someone posed this question earlier. Hallucinate meaning it produces output that is not factual. Which human, group, or company will be accountable for the error? And in the case of the Philippines, a country that is a large consumer of AI, we do not manufacture equipment, we do not create large language models, we are users, then who will be responsible when an AI system hallucinates? And if the error results in actual harms to us, to Filipinos, who will be held accountable in court? What if the AI platform that you're using is based in another country? Is there a way for our local courts to actually go after the perpetrator? And is there a way for us to access remedy or redress for the harm done to us? Okay, so those are very important questions. Legal questions, but also very practical ones. Next is proportionality and do no harm. Proportionality is it means it's being in proper balance or relation vis-a-vis the size or quantity, degree, or severity of something. AI systems must not exceed what is necessary to achieve its legitimate aims or objectives. They should also be appropriate to the context in which they are needed or they were originally designed. We often hear about proportionality in data privacy. Actually, even without AI, in data privacy, we are already made aware of proportionality. The Data Privacy Act of 2012 requires the processing of personal information that must be adequate, relevant, suitable, necessary, and not excessive in relation to a declared purpose or a specific purpose. For example, if a company offers an AI-powered old age filter, such as what you see in the screen right now, it must collect just the right amount of data on people's facial or body features. Because that's what it needs, no? So that it can age your image for you. But it should not ideally collect data on a person's home, for example, like what you see in my background, which is blurred, or the location of the user of that AI tool, because that is not necessary for the app's advertised or intended purpose. So that is what proportionality means. And the collection of data other than the intended purpose can actually do harm. That's why it's important to put that in check. The sixth area is public procurement. We're still under the governance dimension. Public procurement, as many of you here from the ICT and other government agencies know, is the process of purchasing goods, services, and works by the government. When it comes to AI, this focuses on ensuring that governments adhere to international procurement laws and principles, as outlined in a country's policy framework on AI. And this must emphasize fair, transparent, inclusive, diverse, and non-discriminatory procurement of AI systems. Now, you will hear these words, these terms repeatedly in many of the indicators. So in terms of government procuring AI systems, transparency is very important and inclusivity, especially if your constituents or the citizens that you serve are actually a very diverse group of people. In the Philippines, we may not have different races like in the US or in other Asian countries, but we have a very diverse group of indigenous peoples with different languages. And we have to make sure that even the marginalized groups are well represented. And in government procuring AI systems, that is a very important consideration. So still under AI governance, transparency and explainability, which Dr. Peter C. explained earlier. So transparency, it seems to be intuitive, but sometimes we need to remember what these terms mean. When you say transparency, it means that something like a process, practice, or decision is being done in an open manner without secrets so that people can trust actions to be fair and honest. Even in our personal relationship, if you're not transparent to your family or your friends, it seems that you have a lot of secrets. So people will not be able to trust you and they do not see you as honest. Explainability is the quality of enabling people to understand how a particular system works or how a particular outcome or decision was achieved or made by providing information that is, number one, sensible or based on data and logic, and number two, easy to understand. So it is not enough that you're able to explain something. It has to be in a form that humans actually understand. This is closely linked to the concept of interpretability or the capacity to explain the factors and logic that led to an outcome in terms, again, that humans understand. Because the reason why this needs to be emphasized is because other machines can explain, let's say, what a neural network can do. But if it is in a format or language that we cannot understand, then that still is not explainable. And in effect, it's still not transparent. The inner workings of an AI system must be open and accessible to humans. It must be easy for us to understand the explanation of an algorithmic model, for example, the data that drives these models, and the rationale for their use. However, as neural networks become more advanced, explainability and interpretability are becoming more impossibly challenging. A colleague of mine, whom some of you might know, Mr. Dominic Ligot, explains that neural networks now have so many layers such that it's practically impossible for humans to understand how the network figured out a certain output. So there's a growing field in AI called mechanistic interpretability, which attempts to find ways to distill what a network does. But then again, as I've mentioned earlier, that is another machine making sense of what neural networks do. So we still do not understand them. So this is going to become a bigger problem in the future, in the near future, as neural networks advance. So we have to catch up and devise a way for humans to be able to interpret what these networks are doing. Next is access to remedy and redress. When you say access, it means legal mechanisms that allow for human rights violations to be thoroughly investigated and adequately resolved. And it also involves rectifying the harm caused and holding those responsible to account. So remedy refers to removal of the harm. If there's harm done, there should be a way to remove it. Redress refers to the compensation or reparation of that harm. So those are three concepts, interrelated concepts. So persons who have suffered harm as a result of the development of an AI system must have avenues to submit complaints, that's one, pursue legal actions in court, or report issues to a competent authority and have those harms actually addressed. Many countries are now revisiting and in some cases updating existing policies, such as on cybercrime prevention, data privacy, and intellectual property, as well as consumer protection, to factor in now how AI technologies are actually changing and can continue to change things. So for example, in 2022, Air Canada, an airline company in Canada, has a chatbot who gave the wrong information to a passenger about a fare discount, so airfare discount. When the passenger filed a complaint, the airline said the chatbot was a separate legal entity that is responsible for its own actions. So luckily for the passenger, its country, Canada, had authorities. Uh, if the passenger filed a complaint, and the authorities rejected the argument of Air Canada and ordered the airline to pay the passenger a certain amount for damages. Consumer rights groups see this example as a landmark case, given that service providers such as airline companies, telecoms companies, and other service providers are increasingly relying on AI and chatbots for consumer interaction. As you can see in the image there, di ba? Chatbot. I mean, we know it's a chatbot, but can we actually sue the chatbot? Who could we sue? So that is what access to remedy and redress means. Okay. Safety, accuracy, and reliability. Safety means being protected from or from danger, risk, or injury. So there needs to be technical solutions to ensure that AI systems and tools operate safely and reliably and do not introduce new harms on top of existing harms or exacerbate existing risks. Okay. So now we go to the human rights dimension. We have gender equality. Gender equality means equal rights, responsibilities, and opportunities. So it's not just rights to people of all gender identities. This means having access to the same economic, social, and political opportunities as men and boys, especially for women and girls, and persons who identify somewhere outside the binary. So there needs to be a check against AI tools that are embedded with gender inequalities and biases. And when I say embedded with gender inequalities and biases, it could mean that the team that actually developed the AI tool already have biases. So let's take a step back and see, why would AI tools have biases? Because we as humans in the offline world have biases. So we need to make sure that AI tools do not reinforce and amplify discrimination against women, girls, and non-binary persons due to several factors, such as a lack of representativity in the data sets. As we know, AI uses data that's available online. And if the data that is being used for a particular model is not representative of the rights, the responsibilities, and opportunities for other genders, then we can be assured that the AI tool will also spew out the results and outcomes and decisions that are not representative of the other genders. So again, this relates back to a lack of diversity in the offline world, in the teams that are designing and producing and making decisions about AI systems. Okay. Next is data protection and privacy. When you say data privacy, it is the right of an individual to have control over who has access to their personal data and for what purpose. Personal data is any information relating to you as an individual. You are, well, in legal terms, you are the data subject who can be identified from any data directly or indirectly. Examples of personally identifiable data would be your name, your address, your age, your biometrics, etc. In the age of AI, data protection is very important because data protection means regulating the processing of personal data and information and establishing accountability mechanisms when your personal data is misused. What is processing? No? What operations come into play when you say data processing? First of all, the operation can be manual, automatic, or electronic. It can be validating, sorting, summarizing, and aggregating data. In the age of AI, data privacy concerns are probably the same. If you think about it, they're probably the same as when the internet first became popular. So, for those of you out there who remember, when we started using Friendster, Multiply, MySpace, we were actually already putting our personal data out there. So it's the same concerns in the age of AI, but the difference is scale. According to a white paper by the Stanford University, AI systems are so data hungry and lacks transparency that we have even less control now over what information about us is being collected, what it's being used for, and how we might correct or remove such personal information. So, questions that are critical to ask in the age of AI. Is our personal information part of an AI model's training data? Are we actually putting data out there about ourselves and AI models are just collecting them and then processing them without our knowledge? Maybe, no? Yung mga data privacy and terms and conditions if we don't read them. Will chatbots analyze and summarize our conversations and use them to profile us and then use our information for other purposes? Do AI-powered apps have opt-in as default for data sharing? As far as I know, many apps have opt-in for data sharing as a default. Others say it should be like that, no? Or opt-out in many cases. Is there a regulation against this practice? So those are very important questions. Next, we have bias and unfair discrimination. When you say bias, it's prejudice for or against an individual or group. Now, us humans have a natural tendency to classify people into groups according to certain characteristics. In this session alone, I was looking at the list of participants, and based on your offices or your names, I'm already making an unspoken but calculated as grouping in my head. These are from the government. This name sounds Chinese. So these things, characteristics, are things that people usually use to classify others into certain groups. It's a natural tendency. We also classify people based on the different levels of power, status, and income that they have, sometimes unknowingly. And these biases actually figure into the AI models that we also develop. How does this happen? It's called algorithmic bias. Systematic and repeatable errors in AI-powered systems that create unfair outcomes, which can lead to decisions that have a discriminatory impact on certain individuals or groups. Discrimination is treating an individual or group differently from others because of their age, disability, and other characteristics. Discrimination is not necessarily bad because we can use discrimination actually to promote the interests of a particular group. What is bad, however, is unfair discrimination, which is treating an individual or group of people in a way that is unjustifiable and does not promote their interest. Bias and discrimination embedded in AI systems can be used to profile people. This becomes a huge problem when the profiling by the AI system is used as the sole or only basis for making decisions that can potentially harm individuals. For example, in law enforcement, algorithms may implant bias into court environments when judges make decisions about a particular case. So, in 2016, Compass, an AI-powered risk assessment software, gave the following risk assessment score. So there's a scoring system to these two individuals that you now see on your screen. So as we can see, there's a white person on the left, which has been assessed as low risk, while the black person on the right was assessed as medium risk. So the score is 3 and then 6. Let's now look at their offenses. So I am not a lawyer, I'm no court judge, but clearly the man on the left committed graver offenses and should have been considered a higher risk to society. This is just one example of how bias can unfairly discriminate individuals and therefore must be checked. Okay. Next, public participation and awareness. When you say public participation, it means engaging ordinary people in the decision-making process that affect their lives. Public is different from just any participation kasi there can be stakeholder participation wherein you select the people or individuals that you engage with. But public participation is actually getting inputs from ordinary people, from citizens. Now, public awareness is the process of informing the general public and increasing the levels of consciousness about the potential benefits and risks associated with a particular decision or action. The UNESCO recommends to embed a participatory approach in the development and use of AI systems. That there should be general awareness programs, especially for ordinary citizens and non-tech people, or those who are not very tech savvy, about the potential advantages and disadvantages of AI. Okay, next, children's rights. Children's rights promote the need to provide children with special care and protection because, of course, they're still dependent on adults for their survival, for their protection and development. A lack of transparency in the design and deployment of AI tools for children could potentially threaten their rights, such as right to privacy, to play, to protection from exploitation and abuse, and the right to non-discrimination. In today's digital environment, and as any of you with children in your homes would know, children are really more susceptible to hateful, harmful, or offensive content, and even harmful advertisements. No, even advertisements that you see on YouTube could be harmful to children. So AI platforms can be used to abuse children, especially since many AI platforms, if not almost all of them out there that people enjoy, create images. So as a safety feature, some AI tools like Google's Gemini now make it explicit in their own policy guidelines that it should not generate outputs, including child sexual abuse material that exploit or sexualize children. That's just one example of a policy guideline that a particular app has adopted. And I hope, as a mother myself, many more applications will do the same. Okay. Now, this is to me, the most important and most urgent discussion that we might have today. Labor protection. It's the protection of employment conditions, working conditions, and labor welfare, as well as occupational safety, health, and environmental conditions for a worker. Everyone has the right to work, to free choice of employment, to just and favorable conditions of work, and to protection against unemployment. And this is, a right that is recognized globally and has been instilled in many national policy frameworks and laws globally. Labor protection must consider all components in the AI life cycle and value chain. What does this mean? So from the moment that an AI company extracts mineral resources to develop AI components, such as microchips that use metal, to the design phase of AI systems and the development and training of algorithmic methods or models, there should be label protection in each of those components. Especially for a country like the Philippines, it's very urgent and important to discuss how AI technologies have and will continue to disrupt the nature of work and potentially inflict widespread job loss due to automation. The World Economic Forum's 2023 Future of Jobs report predicts that 25% of jobs will be negatively affected by algorithmic displacement over the next 5 years. A similar study by Goldman Sachs predicted that over 300 million jobs globally will be lost or degraded by the rollout of AI. Now, this is sort of a doomsday scenario. Okay, there are many assessments being done globally. And in the Philippines, I think that this is a very important study to have. Labor protection is actually the topic of some bills and resolutions currently filed in the Philippine Congress. Now, their main objective is to ensure that that Filipinos are not displaced unjustly by companies intending to adopt AI solutions to replace humans. So we will discuss these bills later on. Okay. Next is cultural and linguistic diversity. When you talk of cultural diversity, it refers to the range of ideas, customs, and social behaviors being shared by different groups of people. And it's usually expressed through language. AI development entails building machines with human-like intelligence and capabilities. So language being an expression of intelligence and capability. So when AI development fails to adequately represent the larger diversity of global cultures, and then you then subject AI to cultural biases, which can raise ethical concerns and prejudices, as well as risk discrimination and harm, especially to cultural minorities. Again, in the vastness of the AI universe, indigenous peoples, tribes, or those groups in the cultural minority might not be represented. And this can actually create harm. I just want to point out, going back to labor protection, that there are various thoughts and opinions about whether AI would replace human. And one interesting thought comes from Karim Lakhani, who famously said, AI won't replace humans, but humans with AI will replace humans without AI. So I can tell you right now that if this prediction or opinion were to become true, you are already ahead of many people because you're attending this training and equipping yourself with knowledge about AI. Okay, now let's go to the capacities dimension. Competent, competent and competition authorities. Okay. Competition authority is the regulator responsible for overseeing the fair functioning of markets in a country. Why is this important? Well, as you know, AI tools and platforms are being developed, being operated by big tech companies. In many cases, these are the big tech companies. In the stock market, you refer to them as the Magnificent Seven. So you have these examples would be Google, Microsoft, Meta, Amazon, Nvidia, and I think including Tesla as well. So you have these big tech companies who have a dominant market position in terms of AI. And if AI were to take over many aspects, if not almost all aspects of our lives, then you can predict that these big tech companies can actually dictate many aspects of our lives, including the not only as individuals, but even the direction that the country will take when it comes to AI policy. So various concerns have been raised about the effect of AI and dominant AI companies. An important concern is to what extent AI databases, AI tools, of course, have databases or data sets. To what extent can they lead to a dominant position on the market? For example, you ask, does Google or Meta AI have a dominant market position because of the sheer amount of data that they already have on us? Amazon would have, its e-commerce platform, so it knows you personally, it knows what you buy, and it knows your wish list. So that is how intimate these big tech companies know us. That's why competition authorities need to be equipped with skills on how to deal with AI companies. Okay. Public sector skills development. And this is particularly important for this audience right now. Most of you coming from government. skills development is about acquiring work-related skills and competencies through education and training, like this session we're having now. In AI, skills development refers to the technical knowledge, capabilities, and proficiencies that are required to successfully integrate AI into certain functions. So when you talk about, we always hear the word upskilling, reskilling. This is actually what it means to develop your skill or gain new skills that will help you to successfully integrate AI into what you do. So again, if we go back to labor protection, it does not necessarily mean that you will be replaced by AI. Well, it depends. If you're doing something repetitive, mechanical, there's probably more likelihood that machines will overtake your job. But if you are doing something that adds value to the organization, let's say that requires critical thinking, human relations, and brainstorming, strategizing, these things actually can be supported and enhanced by the use of AI tools. Hence, you need skills development. So this is related to the concern about AI's impact on labor. Since AI can now be applied across a wide range of fields and sectors. So AI skills is not just about data science, machine learning. It's not restricted to STEM. There is actually now a growing focus on increasing AI literacy across various sectors, no matter what field you're in. For example, if you are a cook, how can AI help you? If you are into farming or manufacturing, in tourism, these are actually sectors where some analysts have predicted AI would be of most value or use. But the question is, are we equipping these industries and the people working in those sectors to use AI and effectively uplift their lives by integrating AI into their work? Also, the rapid uptake of AI used by governments globally demands that basic skills such as coding, computing, programming, robotics be fully integrated into skills program in the civil service to ensure that government personnel understand how to use them and also how to apply them responsibly and ethically. Last among the indicators is international cooperation. It is a collaborative relationship between countries to work toward shared objectives. In AI, international cooperation refers to joint efforts between countries to align their policies in terms of AI and ensure that we have global adherence to responsible AI, and that globally we are looking at inclusive and equitable access, trust and accountability mechanisms are in place, and that we are able to advance scientific research and technical knowledge. The last part I would like to emphasize, the advancement of scientific research and technological knowledge. Because for a country like the Philippines, where its investment on R&D and funding for scientific research is not at par with other countries, it is important that we cooperate with other countries who are way advanced than us. So we can already learn from what they're doing and actually, as I said, adopt and adapt what research and technical knowledge they already have and apply it to us. So no need to reinvent the wheel, but we have to make sure that the knowledge and applications that we learn from other countries are appropriate to our context. Okay. So thank you for bearing with me in the deep dive into the different indicators for responsible AI. So going to the result of the Global Index on Responsible AI, we see here a map showing the results based on scores range. As you can see, Europe, North American, and Australia fared very well in responsible AI and got the highest scores based on the regions. Countries like the Netherlands and Germany got the highest scores overall, followed by Ireland, the UK, and the US. In Asia, Singapore, that small dot in Asia, and Japan garnered the highest scores. The Philippines got the highest score in Southeast Asia, second only to Singapore. So that's the overall result. Now let's look at the top 10 countries that fared best in responsible AI. So the countries that showed the highest regard for responsible AI, according to the index, through their national policy, their government actions, and initiatives by non-state actors, come from developed countries from North America, Europe, and Australia. The top four are in Europe, that's the Netherlands, Germany, Ireland, and the United Kingdom. The United States is ranked fifth. European countries occupy the top 6 to 8 spots. That's Estonia, Italy, and France. Top 9 is Canada, which is in North America. And on the 10th spot is Australia. How about in Asia? In Asia, the countries and jurisdictions that made it to the top 35 spots include Singapore and Japan, ranked 11th and 12th. India got the 25th spot. Republic of Korea or South Korea is ranked 27th. And the Philippines, together with China, Vietnam, and Taiwan or Chinese Taipei, got the 31st to 34th spot. Singapore, if you notice, if you look at the score, I don't know if it's too small for you to see, but let me point out that Singapore, Japan, India, China, and Vietnam in Asia fared the best in terms of government actions. So their key competency is how their governments are responding to AI. Meanwhile, in the Philippines, we did best when it comes to non-state actors. That's the purple shading that you see there. In particular, we have good initiatives from our universities, the academe, and civil society or non-profit organizations. So you can see the contrast. No? Countries with the lowest scores in the global index are those in low-income countries in Africa, the Caribbean, and Asia. And we can tackle this issue later on. Okay. So what are the key takeaways from the global index? Number one, AI governance does not necessarily translate into responsible AI. So having a framework governing AI does not mean that you're actually doing responsible AI and that you're promoting or protecting human rights. Countries that performed well in the index were able to demonstrate a wide range of governance mechanisms, including sector-specific policies, which I discussed earlier, and legislative frameworks to safeguard human rights and to advance responsible AI in use. But the key is how they are being enforced, how the government, the state, is actually implementing programs and how government initiatives are effectively safeguarding human rights. So that's the first takeaway. Second, mechanisms ensuring the protection of human rights in the context of AI are still limited. Few countries have mechanisms to protect human rights at risk from AI. Such mechanisms, such as impact assessment to measure the real and potential harm of AI systems, access to redress and remedy whenever harm occurs, and public procurement guidelines, which oftentimes include the use of AI in the delivery of socioeconomic rights and citizen services, are still very limited in some countries. Okay. International cooperation is an important cornerstone of responsible AI practices. So across all regions, international cooperation was actually the highest score in all the thematic areas, demonstrating the foundations for global solidarity. The majority of countries assessed were able to demonstrate that they have activities around international cooperation, which is very significant, especially for developing countries whose institutions, whose R&D, and whose practices are not yet that established when it comes to responsible AI. So this needs to be leveraged, especially by developing countries like the Philippines. Okay, next. Gender equality, unfortunately, remains a critical gap. So despite the growing awareness of the importance of gender equality in AI, it is quite concerning that most countries have not yet made significant efforts to promote it. It was actually one of the lowest performing thematic areas of the index. Only 24 countries assessed had government frameworks addressing the intersection of gender and AI. And I'm very happy to note that the Philippines DICT, one of its first initiatives was to actually look at ethical AI through the lens of gender equality and protection. But apart from that, non-state actors globally, not just in the Philippines, are actually showing greater activity in this field, particularly civil society organizations and academic institutions. Next, key issues of inclusion and equality are not being addressed. So few governments consider this at all as a priority. This relates to rights of marginalized or underserved groups. So this particular thematic area actually performed among the lowest. So equality and inclusion, such as including gender equality, labor protections, and right to work, bias and unfair discrimination, and cultural and linguistic diversity, need to play a more crucial role in our development and deployment of AI. Workers in AI economies are not adequately protected. If some of you are not aware, we actually have a lot of workers already using AI. So any worker in the platform economy, they are already being subject to AI. So few countries are actually ensuring the existence of labor rights to protect laborers and employees as the use of AI increase in the workplace. And efforts to upskill workforces do not correlate. Again, efforts to upskill workforces do not correlate with sufficient labor protection for workers whose jobs might be at risk of being displaced from AI. Even if companies get AI training for their employees or upskilling, it does not mean that they are being protected. It is one step, if not the first step, but making sure that jobs are protected or that humans will not be unjustly replaced or discriminated in the workplace is important. Number 7, responsible AI must incorporate cultural and linguistic diversity. There needs to be a check on whether there's an imbalance in the current AI models, particularly when it comes to large language models. Because if used responsibly, AI can actually help promote diversity and protect low-resourced languages and cultural heritage. Okay. Number 8, there are major gaps in ensuring the safety, security, and reliability of AI systems. Among the 138 countries that were surveyed, only 28% have taken steps to address the safety, accuracy, and reliability of AI systems. And only 25% have government frameworks in place to enforce technical safety and security standards, including data privacy and cybersecurity standards for AI. This is this finding is deeply concerning because we need to make sure that there is technical integrity of AI on a global scale. And remember, as consumers of AI, we Filipinos are at risk of this. If countries that actually develop and design and deploy AI systems are not taking safety, data privacy, and cybersecurity into consideration. Next, universities and civil society play a crucial role in advancing responsible AI. Some of them, especially the universities, are actually taking the lead in terms of promoting responsible AI, especially in data collection, data processing, and in promoting inclusivity. And finally, there is still a long way to achieve adequate levels of responsible AI worldwide. So despite the proliferation, actually the fast evolving changes and advancements in the development of AI systems, the majority of countries around the world are far from adopting responsible AI. 67% of the world's countries in the survey scored up to 25 out of the 100 points in the index, and a further 25% between more than 25 and 50 up. So suffice to say that most countries that were surveyed, they scored 50 and below out of 100. So that's a very, I would say, alarming finding. This means that what is the impact on us, on people? Nearly 6 billion people across the world are living in countries that do not have adequate measures in place to protect or promote their human rights in the context of AI. Nearly 6 billion people. And how many, million Filipinos are affected by this? Okay. Let's put a spotlight on the Philippines. So compared to other Asian countries in the top 35 spot in the global index, the Philippines fared very well in terms of non-state actors. In particular, the academe and civil society organizations are the bright spots in the country. Let me give you some examples. The University of the Philippines has issued Principles for Responsible and Trustworthy AI. The DLSU has conducted a study on ethical technology assessment of AI. The results of the study will be used to reflect on the question of what level of autonomy or control should be provided to the affected individuals concerning the use of AI and IoT without compromising their legitimate purposes. So studies like that, we need more studies like that to be funded and to be made public. The Ateneo established its Gen AI task force, and one of its functions is to examine ways by which the university can train their students to be ethical and humane users of AI. Non-profit, non-government organizations are also a bright spot in the Philippines. One example is the Ambit Philippines, which aims to empower nations with shared development goals, and those who are disenfranchised populations to actually advocate for the interest in the development and use of AI. The Foundation for Media Alternatives, or the FMA, has been looking into algorithms of abuse, such as addressing online gender-based violence in the age of AI. And according to the FMA, one of the most serious risks of AI is its ability to facilitate new types of online gender-based violence. So as AI models enable impersonation, easier way to hack your accounts, or stalking and cyber harassment, it is so easy, much, much easier to proliferate online gender-based violence. Okay, now we go to the last two slides. Insights for AI policy in the Philippines. So many countries are contemplating on moving from just having just responsible AI principles and guidelines, moving to actually passing legislation to institutionalize AI safeguards. The EU Artificial Intelligence Act is one example of a law that prescribes very stringent rules and prohibits certain AI-powered activities based on risks. In the Philippines, there are several bills and resolutions that are focused on AI, and these initiatives are mainly focused on governance and the creation of a government body who will have an oversight function over AI. Some of them wish to regulate AI. Several of them intend to promote labor protection, and one promotes education. So very briefly, let's talk about the governance-related bills. So HB 796 is about establishing what's called the Artificial Intelligence Development Authority, or AIDA, which will oversee the development and deployment of AI technologies and ensure compliance with AI ethics principles and guidelines and protect the rights of and welfare of individuals that will be affected by AI. Next, we have two bills from Representative Mike Tan. So HB 7913 proposes the creation of an Artificial Intelligence Board, or AIB, which, like the AIDA, will oversee the development, application, and use of AI systems. But the AIB will have regulatory and supervisory authority. It can conduct investigation, impose penalties for violations, and initiate administrative or criminal actions against offenders. So that's the main difference. HB 7983 proposes to establish a National Center for AI Research, or NCARE, which will be attached to the Department of Science and Technology and to be headed by a board composed of key members of relevant government departments. So this NCARE, actually there's already such a center launched by the Department of Trade and Industry, but this particular bill proposes that the NCARE be attached to the DOST. And next on the governance-related bills is HB 10385. This bill by the Revilla family, representatives from the Revilla family actually, intends to establish an AI bureau within the DICT. So it's not a separate government entity, but it's a bureau within the ICT. It intends to develop a national AI development and regulation strategy, conduct R&D, formulate governance frameworks, and prevent worker displacement and monitor compliance in the protection of rights for those who will be affected by AI. Now let's go to the regulation bills. HB 10567 by Representative El Rey Villafuerte proposes to extract accountability and transparency in the production or distribution of deep fakes in the Philippines to prevent threats from its exploitation or misuse. So we've been hearing about deep fakes, and this is especially relevant today with the upcoming 2025 elections. The DICT Secretary Ivan Uy, said that the government is aware of these deepfakes and that it is actually working with AI providers such as OpenAI, ChatGPT, and Google to address deepfakes. But then we go to our question earlier. In terms of jurisdiction, access to remedy and redress, how can the Philippine government make sure that whenever there are offenders, there are deepfakes that can cause confusion and misinformation and disinformation among voters, how can we make them accountable? And what is the legal mechanism that we can use? Okay. On labor protection, so far we have two bills. One is by Representative Ataide, HB 9448. This bill prohibits employers from making decisions solely based on recommendations or results generated by AI. So the operative word there being solely. So employers cannot just make decisions on employment based on solely on AI. This is to prevent replacement of human workers and displacement, as well as loss of job security or reduction of salary. Yung pa yun, no? You may keep your job, but then your salary and your benefits will be reduced because many of the things you can do can actually be performed by AI more effectively and faster. So it costs less for the employer. So these are, very important, very relevant issues that the bill purports to examine. However, I would, as a policy analyst, caution against just jumping into prohibition or regulation. As Dr. Peter C. said earlier, we should not rush, making conclusions about this. There needs to be a balance. There needs to be a middle ground such that we also do not stifle innovation, and we also do not prevent the private sector from adopting innovation, especially with the call now for digitalization across the different sectors. Okay. HB 10460 by Representative Suwan allows employers to terminate or lay off employers due to the installation of AI, but provided that there are certain standards to be met. Finally, we have HB 10751, which seeks to establish a generative AI in Education Council, or GAIC, or which purports or wishes to oversee and guide the integration of Gen AI into the Philippine education system, which of course will require consultations with various stakeholders, especially educators, students, and parents. That's very important to gather inputs in the formulation of this regulation. Okay. Finally, we are down to our last slide. What are the 3 key insights that we can get from the Global Index on responsible AI? Many efforts to promote responsible AI are already embedded in broad government AI strategies, but they lack specific measures related to human rights. This trend highlights the need for comprehensive policies, recommendations, and guidelines based on human-centered approach. Particular attention to human rights. And the indicators, the 19 thematic areas and indicators that we discussed earlier, should be taken into consideration. Now, I do understand that not all of them can be equally applied, but we need to look and assess the gaps. Where are we lacking the skills, the institutional capacity, and the resources? And then from there, we can probably zoom in and put more resources. Next, the measurement of responsible AI must take into consideration the responsibilities of actors across the entire AI lifecycle and ecosystems. So this includes government actions beyond establishing a policy framework. Again, Dr. Peters, he mentioned this. We have so many good laws out there, very well crafted, very well written, but the action that happens after is the most important part. And also through implementation of these frameworks, we can evaluate if we are being effective. And based on the implementation, we can give a feedback back to the policy-making cycle and then enhance, update, revise these policy frameworks as necessary. So it's really a cycle. But the important thing is, after the policy, we have to implement so that we can progress. Finally, as international cooperation on responsible AI is an area of shared commitment between countries around the world, there's a key lever for strengthening the role of global communities in terms of collaboratively monitoring responsible AI, progress in practice. And as I've been emphasizing from the start, the Philippines needs to focus its energy also on international cooperation. We might not have the skills, the resources, the maturity of institutions right now, but with the help of like-minded democratic countries, we will be able to improve our AI posture and equip ourselves with the necessary not only resources but mindset and awareness about how to promote responsible AI.